Hey y'all. So, as promised, because I am a woman of my word, I want to cover the whole Me Too controversy as if it's not controversial in and of itself. And I want to talk specifically about how this whole Me Too Time's Up movement was a scam from the jump. Now, let me give you some backstory on Me Too, and then we're going to slip and slide into Time's Up, and then I'm going to give you my personal commentary as to why those two movements were failed to doom to begin with. So, first, I am pulling up an article from Vox, and it is titled Seven Positive Changes That Have Come from the Me Too Movement. It gives you a little bit of the history of Me Too. We're not going to read all through the article, but I'm giving a little bit of a preview as to like what the context is about, and then my commentary. The impact of the movement goes far beyond powerful men losing their jobs. Hashtag MeToo was never about getting men fired. When activist Tarana Burke started the Me Too campaign more than 10 years ago, her goal was, in quotations, to spread a message for survivors. You're heard, you're understood. End quote. When actress Alyssa Milano helped kick off the current phase of the movement 2 years ago, she wanted to give people a sense of the magnitude of the problem, end quote. So, with that being said, within the first paragraph, they made this distinction. Tarana Burke, an actual black community activist, she started Me Too back in like 2008. So that was her original project, her original baby, her original intellectual content and material. It wasn't until Alyssa Milano saw the hashtag and she ran with it. So now we're looking at it from a different perspective because we assume that it was something that was just snatched off the streets, created overnight, and then boom, Me Too. No, no, no. The one Tarana Burke started was the original basis and original intent. It got muddied when Alyssa Milano took it and ran with it. Now let's get back into the article. As they made clear, hashtag MeToo has always been about raising awareness of the prevalence and pernicious impact of sexual violence. It's also about creating change. As Al Jenpu, executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, told Vox last year, hashtag MeToo is a movement of survivors and their supporters powered by courage, determined to end sexual violence and harassment. So, when Tarana Burke started Me Too, hashtag Me Too, which I don't even think it was a hashtag back then because in 2008, was we really using hashtags like that? Like, not really. So, Me Too, when Tarana Burke started it, it was actually a movement that she did on the community ground-based level. As a black woman in urban settings, that movement was for women of color, specifically black and Latino young girls, young women, to talk about their sexual violence, to name names and get the justice and the healing that they needed. So this was truly grassroots and this was truly to benefit the community. Again, it changed and morphed into a whole nother beast when Alyssa Milano jocked the movement and turned it into a hashtag. Now let's continue. But at this point, 2 years after a New York Times expose on allegations against producer Harvey Weinstein helped make hashtag MeToo a topic of conversation across America, what has really changed? As a journalist covering the issue, it's a question I hear more often than almost any other. Survivors have shared their stories. Some powerful men have lost their jobs, but at a broader social level, is anything really changing? So, that was a little bit of what I wanted to read from the article to give you a background history on it. If y'all want to read the rest of the article, I will link it in the description box down below. But That's just like the idea, the concepts, the genesis of Me Too, to give y'all a correct lens as we're filtering the information. And now we're going to jump into another article from the New York Times, and it's a recent article, and it's titled "Time's Up CEO Resigns Amid Crisis Over Cuomo Ties." Now, this is in regards to the Time's Up movement, but as we know, Me Too started, then Time's Up started, and the figureheads for Time's Up was Oprah, was Shonda Rhimes, and a few other figureheads, including Alyssa Milano and even Rose McGowan. Now, the interesting thing about Rose McGowan, she was calling out names is within the industry before Alyssa Milano came along and dropped Me Too. As well as Rose McGowan, when the power started shifting and people started aligning with power, like we're going to get into within this article, she started calling out Alyssa Milano's name. She started calling out big people within the industry's names because she started seeing that this genuine grassroots movement that was not only supposed to help women, because let's not act as only women who get sexually assaulted. Like in the military, you know, men get sexually assaulted too. And not just in the military, we see this in all facets of life. Predators are predators are predators regardless. Victims are victims are victims regardless. So Rose McGowan started seeing like, oh, this is just another takeover. This is just an exchange of power. You discard Harvey Weinstein, but there's just be another person in the position of Harvey Weinstein who's going to keep up the same old, same old. So she started calling out people's names and referencing how they're aligning with power and no true change is getting done. Now, let's get into the article. The departure is the latest fallout from revelations that group leaders advised the former New York governor on handling harassment allegations. And they have the picture of the former Time's Up CEO who had resigned. Tchen stepped down on Thursday, saying her leadership of the anti-harassment organization had, quote, become a painful and divisive focal point, end quote. Now, I don't know how it becomes divisive and painful when you are fighting for victims, unless you are fighting for the protection of the predators, because my personal philosophy, and it just turns out to be right in every situation, change out the people, change up the talking point, it tends to still be the same. You cannot align with power and think power and morality are going to mix. Power and morality never mix. Why? Because power does not like to be checked. That's why you have to have these grassroots movements. This is why you have to be socially aware. Because if power checked itself, would we be talking about global warming, or would we actually have a plan in action that we're doing to stop global warming? Power does not like to concede. It likes to devour. So there's no way power would allow itself to be checked and be okay with that, because power likes to stand as absolute. Hence why the quote is, absolute power corrupts absolutely. No man should have all that power. And I can throw you more and more quotes, but the genesis of it all, power and morality, money and morality do not mix. Oftentimes those with power corrupt, and those with power don't have morality, or their morality is selective. When y'all harm me, guns blazing. But when I harm you, all I gotta do is send a little something something on somebody's campaign, and they're gonna make my issue disappear. Ask the governor, Schneider of Michigan, specifically Flint, Michigan, who still has unclean water and whose citizens are still dying and facing medical issues. Now let's continue. And this article was written in August 26, 2021. The chief executive of Time's Up, the prominent anti-harassment charity, resigned on Thursday, the latest fallout in a crisis that threatens the organization's survival. For weeks, the group has been in upheaval over that some survivors of sexual abuse have called a fundamental betrayal. Its leaders appear to have allied more closely with former Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, who faces sexual harassment allegations from 11, right after 10, before 12, 11 women, than with the first accusers to come forward. Tchen, who had led the group since 2019, said in a statement that her position at the helm of Time's Up has become a painful and divisive focal point. Again, I ask you all who are listening, what is divisive and painful when you are fighting for victims unless you have been corrupted? Because it is painful for the victim. But if you're focused on helping the victim, then how is it personally painful for you, the person who has to resign because they got caught double dipping? Again, money and morality never has and never will mix. Power does not concede. Power is not going to investigate itself. You see this all the time with the government officials. Every time the CIA, the FBI, local government, federal government investigates itself, does it ever find itself guilty? Common sense, does it ever find itself guilty? It never does. No different when cops investigate police brutality. Yeah, money and morality don't mix. And power does not concede. Power is not going to invest in any way, shape, or form that's going to diminish its reach. But let's get into the article. Founded after the Harvey Weinstein revelations, backed by influential women including Oprah Winfrey and Reese Witherspoon, Time's Up has been in what its own vice chair recently called an, quote, existential crisis, end quote, over its mission. The board chair, Roberta Kaplan, also resigned over the Cuomo matter. Powerful backers like Shonda Rhimes. How to get away with murder? Scratch that. How to get away with sexual assault. I guess that's her midnight edition? Behind the scenes edition? Oh, it's not a script. Have tried to rally support and reboot. Staff members have complained about lack of direction, and outside critics have questioned whether the organization has strayed from its founding motives. So this movement was supposed to help everyday regular schmegler victims of sexual assault, regardless of class, regardless of social economics, regardless of race, regardless of gender. Everybody can be a victim like everybody could be a perpetrator. It's really your intent and your character as a person, right? And then you have people of power, people who got a lot of money, a lot of reputations, a lot of deals to lose, as well as these powerful people rub shoulders with, was friends with these people that they now have to hold accountable. So these people, for example, Oprah, Shonda Rhimes, these are people who worked in the business. So you're going to tell me Oprah and Shonda Rhimes had no idea Harvey Weinstein was Harvey Weinstein? Like they were just so baffled? Hollywood is only so big. There's a lot of actors, a lot of actresses, a lot of ceremonies for mental masturbation. But nonetheless, it's only so big. You're telling me that all of these women had no idea Harvey Weinstein was Harvey Weinstein? You tell me Reese Witherspoon from Totally Blonde, you're telling me that she had no idea? And these are the women who are supposed to hold these men accountable when they got deals with these men. They're friends with these men. They go to these men's barbecues and family gatherings. They have deals on the table with each other. But you're telling me that they were going to take the position of supporting and rallying and aiding women that they've never known, that they don't care for, and they have no real connection with? This reminds me of trickle-down economics, which we obviously know don't work. The top-down has never worked. But you know what has worked? Grassroots up. One example, the Black Panther Party. Whether you like, whether you don't like, that's not the point. The Black Panther Party started and created social programs that we use still to this day. One of those programs are free lunches. It was the Black Panther Party that used to feed its own communities. And now that's embedded into the federal system, and it turns out to be free lunch. And that's just an example. It started grassroots, and then it went up into government systems. And that's how things truly change. Whether we're talking about the 40-hour work week, that started off of socialism, but it started off from the workers' union, the labor unions. It always starts grassroots. It always starts community roots. It starts bottom up, never top down. Because again, money and morality does not mix. And again, power does not concede. Power does not look to be checked. Because we see this time and time again. When powerful people get caught up, when government officials and government bureaucracy gets caught up and they investigate themselves, there's a lot of people at the top that don't face their punishment, as well as if anybody faces punishment, it's a slap on the wrist. And usually what happens is those who are investigating themselves say that they're not guilty. But let's get into the article and continue. How could at Time's Up Now have allowed itself to jeopardize the safe and powerful space it was building to protect and empower survivors? Tweeted Alexandria Wuchow. I might mess this up. Forgive me. Biaggi, a state senator in New York who has worked on sexual harassment legislation. The departure of Ms. Tchen, who served as Michelle Obama's chief of staff in the White House, raises as much questions for Time's Up as it resolves. She was a proponent of the organization's initial bold mission for female power players to use their connections for good, i.e., top down. And again, we've seen this time and time again. It never works. Trickle down effect never works. In her departing statement, Ms. Tchen endorsed that approach again. We cannot just shout on the outside for change without helping companies, government leaders, and policymakers find the solutions to do better, she said. But when dealing with Mr. Cuomo's office and in other instances, that strategy proved compromising. Yes, it's always compromising. Because top down never works. We see this time and time again. The only things that stick is when it is social, grassroots, community based and up. Right? We wouldn't even be talking about police reform if it wasn't for folks going out in these streets protesting, whether you agree with you, whether you don't agree. But it had those in power sweating because they realized that the commoners, me, you, and us regular folks, without power, without the prestige, without the titles, me and you regular folks, we commoners got together and said, we're not going to take no more ish. And then they started sweating. That's what happens. It always happens grassroots. It always happens community-based. And enough power, enough solidarity, keyword solidarity, together, things get done. But at the top down, it doesn't. How many people are still waiting for that housing fund that was supposed to support people during the pandemic, so the government was going to cover their rent? How many people have gotten that money? The overwhelming majority, more than 90%, is still sitting, supposedly still sitting in those funds. The people who were supposed to get access to that money didn't get access to that money. Another example where top down always fails. But let's continue. Ms. Kaplan and Ms. Tchen provided feedback on an unpublished opinion column that smeared Mr. Cuomo's first accuser, Lindsay Boylan. So, the CEO, Ms. Tchen, and Ms. Kaplan provided, quote, feedback on an unpublished opinion column that smeared Mr. Cuomo's first accusers. So, instead of protecting the accuser of Mr. Cuomo. And let's say you want to be like Switzerland, neutral. At the very least, you wouldn't give your opinion because that's not being neutral. So the women in position of power that's supposed to check the men in power are now working and aiding and abetting the perpetrator and not the victim. Tell me why I'm not surprised. Tell me why I am not surprised. Miss Kaplan, a lawyer, also consulted with a top Cuomo aide about how strong a stand Time's Up should take on the allegations. So now, the lawyer, Miss Kaplan, is consulting with Cuomo's aide about if they shouldn't, should they support Lindsay Boylan, should they not? But the organization's fundamental principle is to support victims. And now you're bargaining if you should support a victim because a victim is accusing a person of power. But I thought having women of power to check men of power was supposed to resolve the issue at hand. I guess not. You know what? This is kind of giving me tease of when Trump was running for president and all the women in their pussy hats came and they were talking about my pussy grabs back. And then the polls came in and Trump was the next president. It reminds me something like that. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. And don't get it twisted. I was never going to ally and rally behind Hillary Clinton. But at least I'm not a hypocrite. The Times recently reported, and Miss Tchen told colleagues to stand down, in quotations, stand down. Miss Tchen told colleagues to, quote, stand down, unquote, from releasing a statement in support of Miss Boylan. So your whole premise for existing Time's Up is to support victims of sexual assault. And now you're telling your colleagues, the people who work for Time's Up, to stand down in supporting Miss Boylan. This is what happens when power checks itself. It tells itself to stand down. According to texts obtained by the Washington Post. Almost since the inception of Time's Up in 2018, its small staff had expressed concerns about the expanding direction and unclear mission of the organization and the ways in which Miss Tchen and others operated. So since 2018, a group of staff members were like, Miss Tchen is moving real funny style, real sideways, real sneaky, real deceptive, real underhanded in regards to expanding the direction of the organization's mission because it wasn't clear. So what that means is if it's unclear to the staff, that meant you said one thing publicly, but you did something behind the scenes, hence why Miss Tchen has to resign. Because if the mission is clear, it's an unstated conclusion because what we do follows up with what we said. So we don't have to consistently be like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. Because what we're doing speaks for itself.
Hence the saying, actions speak louder than words.
Small staff within Time's Up saw the way Miss Tchen was moving and called that out. And this dilemma was boiling in 2018. It's just in 2021, the cat was out the bag. In June 2020, employees took their worries directly to Ms. Tchen, telling her that they believed they had strayed too far from the people they were supposed to be helping. Meaning, since 2018, 2019, 2020, within 3 years, the staff who already had the concern bubbling in 2018 were like, in 2020, they had been fed up enough to call out Tchen to her face and say, hey, what our mission meant and what we said we stood for is not practice and follow through with our actions. It has strayed away too far from its original consensus. Survivors of sexual misconduct. So if Time's Up and Miss Tchen strayed too far away from the original mission, which was supposed to help survivors of sexual misconduct, then one is supposed to say the total opposite ends, because as the staff said, they strayed far from the mission. So how far can you go away from the mission for it to be such a bad situation that you have to call people up of high position? Well, we don't have to guess and ponder too much on it, because what strayed far from the mission really means is that you're aligning with the perpetrator. You're so far disconnected for victims, so far disconnected with the intent of the mission, that you circled back around to supporting the predator and not supporting the victims. That's how far the mission of Time's Up has removed itself from the actual victims, that now they're supporting the perpetrators. A separate branch, the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, provides legal support to victims. Now Monifa Bandeli, an experienced nonprofit executive, will lead the organization on an interim basis. Honestly, before I even really get into this with my two-piece of an opinion, once you slander your own mission, your own grassroots, your own community-based anything, the movement, it's kind of tainted. This is why we are supposed to keep our grassroots, community-based. Not only because money and morality never mix, but also when people have that much trust, that much momentum, that much care around any subject, and you toil it, you soil it, you align with the predators, it's hard to get that energy to revamp itself back to the original cause, because you broke the trust. How many victims was really riding with Time's Up, supporting Time's Up, rallying behind Time's Up, arguing about the validity of Time's Up, put their life on the line, put their careers on the line, put their public space on the line, and then you fumble it to align with Cuomo? It totally just F's up everything that you had and everything that you could have had, because you chose money and power over supporting victims and survivors. It's hard to be a victim and even claim the victim status, even have the motivation and the support to seek justice, and then to think an organization that has your back doesn't. It tells victims this is another version of wolf in sheep's clothing. This is just another charade, that they're not going to get the support that they need. They're not going to get the medical care that they need. They're not going to get the therapy they need. They're not going to get whatever that they need. When trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. So I'm not saying Time's Up is totally over, but there's going to have to be a lot of cleaning from the top down. Because it wasn't just Tchen and it wasn't just Kaplan. There was other people there too. All of them need to be eradicated. Period. On Thursday, the board said it would pursue and, quote, an independent investigation into how we work and how we can best accomplish our mission, end quote. So that means nobody knows their jobs. This makes me think, how many of these people actually were victims of sexual assault, or know victims of sexual assault, or know the psychological battles that victims experience? Like, do you actually know these things? It seems like it's something that you applied for. It seems like something you saw on Indeed and put your application in for. Do you know this? Do you live this? Have you heard people's lived experiences? Because it seems like you have not. Because if you did, that's another layer of competency, cultural competency. When you're from this, you know this. You're not going to treat it like it's just another job, right? Tarana Burke had Me Too since 2008. It didn't blow up until 2016, when Alyssa Milano jocked the movement. She was doing this for a very long time, and she wasn't corrupted. It didn't become corrupted when other people saw it as a power play. It didn't become corrupted until other people saw it was advantageous for their career and their personal bank accounts. Yeah, that blunt. So if they're going to recreate and revamp Time's Up, fire everybody at the top and get real people who've actually lived the experience of trauma or helped people of trauma or those who have the cultural competency to deal with this. Have y'all ever been on a rape crisis hotline? Have you ever talked to someone who was just assaulted? Have you ever been with the victim as she's getting a rape test? Like, do you have that experience? Do you know that experience? No. But here you are taking on a position because it's just another career move for you. And that's why money and morality does not mix. You have no invested interest in this. You have no lived experience of this. This is just another career move for you. Whereas victims and their experiences, that's just not a little bump on the road. That's not just a little setback. But let us continue. Quote, "We remain committed to the work Time's Up was founded to pursue. Safe, equitable, and dignified work for all women," end quote, the board said in a statement. The National Women's Law Center announced on Friday that the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund would end its contract with public relations firm SKDK, a move that puts more distance between the Legal Defense Fund and Time's Up. SKDK currently manages the Defense Fund's program and matches harassment and assault survivors with public relations officials. The Law Center will soon take over that responsibility. I don't get it. SKDK currently manages the Defense Fund's program that matches assault survivors with public relations professionals. So you're getting victims PR instead of getting them like actual help, like actual therapy sessions, like actual rape kits, like actual like PR. Again, you have no connections with it. This is the equivalent of just putting your application in on Indeed. You have no real connection with this. And I'm not speaking from the lenses of trauma bonding because that's a problem in and of itself. But I'm talking about compassion. I'm talking about empathy. I'm talking about like, you know this because this is your work. You've been invested in this. You've seen this. You've lived this. If you personally haven't lived this, you got a sister, you got a cousin, you know, if something happened to the little girl down the street, and that experience of you just seeing how the community had to deal with that impacted you, and now here you are. Y'all don't have this. This is not you. This has no way, shape, or form any effect on you. It's the equivalent of saying the sky is blue, the grass is green. It means nothing to you. You're not invested in this. This is why it was so easy to flop on the victims and align with Cuomo. You don't care. It's just another job. It's just another job. And now you get the PR representation that you want. You get the accolades, you get the money, you get the brand deals, you get this and the third. But what do the victims get? They could be matched with public relations professionals. That's what they can be matched with. So other people within this scam of an organization that tells you, yeah, you can accuse him. You better not accuse him. No, we can't accuse him. We might accuse him. We'll see if we can talk to their people. Our people will call their people and we'll see if we want to pursue this legal action. So we're making deals behind the scene of whose story is more legitimate and whose story is less legitimate, not because of actual factual evidence, but it's out of like who we can align with power and who we don't want to rock the boat with. So, and those who we're okay with rocking the boat with because they don't really have enough clout or money or whatever that we need, so we'll throw them underneath the bus. And that mentality, not only is it trash, but it also devalues the credibility of real victims and real survivors. Because now it's like, can we really believe sexual assault stories? Because, you know, they'll be hooked up with a PR team. You know, they'll be told their stories will be valid if they go after these type of people. Now it turns into a clout situation. It turns into a money scheme situation. It turns into ad hominem attacks. Now it delegitimizes actual victims. Because again, money and morality don't mix. In a statement, the Law Center called the SKDK team's commitment to the fund's goal, quote, unparalleled, unquote. but it made the decision to part ways, quote, to ensure that the independence of our work is clear to the survivors we serve, unquote. Everybody's unclear, but everybody's in the same organization, the gag. The staff are unclear about Tchen and Kaplan's direction. Now, SKDK ain't clear about their direction. So no one knows their job because no one's really that invested because, again, this is just a career opportunity. Even with the mission statement, everybody's unclear. The gag. Because people aren't following through with the mission statement. The gag. The decision follows revelations about Time's Up board member, the SKDK managing director Hillary Rosen's involvement in the group's response to the first Cuomo allegations. So the director of SKDK took the side of Tchen when it came to dismissing Cuomo's first sexual assault victim, accusing him. Even though with 11 other women trailing behind, can we? Should we? I don't know. Gives me very much tease of Handmaid's Tales under his eye. It's giving me very much Serena from the Handmaid's Tales. When she gets her pinky chopped off, oh my God, Gilead is horrible. But if she gets to wear green and sit on the throne, everything is everything. Women's empowerment, Oprah, who alleged that she's been through sexual assault in her childhood. But she was sure buddy-buddy with Harvey Weinstein and the Time's Up folks. A SKDK spokesperson said in a statement, quote, "We are grateful that they will now take on this role." Quote, "Publicly, the board has resolved to rebuild Time's Up, but several members said it would be a challenge. Morale is catering, and the board and the staff do not agree about the fundamental question raised by the Cuomo scandal." Meaning, there's some people who still want to benefit off of aligning with Cuomo. They don't know how this is going to rock and how this is going to roll. They don't know how this is going to shake and bake. So they don't know if Cuomo's still going to have power. If Cuomo's still in power, which we know now he is not, then they want to keep that position open because if any positions opens within the Cuomo cabinet, they want to have first dibs. But if Cuomo's going down, then they want to be like, yeah, Cuomo ain't ish. We don't support him. Down with Cuomo. So they want to see how this power play is going to turn out and how they can benefit from it. That's what that means. In case you wasn't clear. Because everybody's not clear. Have a mission statement. Had movement, had support, even had people donating small dollar donations to this grand scheme of a movement. But everybody top down doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't know how to do it. Everybody got their hand in the cookie jar. Everybody's on this side and not that side and every side. But the victims. How close can the organization get to power without being tainted? Some staff members and outside critics think that Time's Up requires a systematic change beyond the recent resignations, according to interviews. And the gag, since we're talking about gagging, this organization hasn't really been in power or been in existence for very long. It started in 18, 19, 20, 21? 4 years, not even 5 years has this organization been together. And it's a whole mess. It's a whole ruckus. It's just tainted in less than 5 years. So ask yourself about organizations that have been here for umpteenth years, umpteenth decades, been here for century and some more, and some change. If this is how Time's Up operates behind the scenes that spilled out into the scenes, then what about all these other organizations that have been here for umpteenth amount of decades and umpteenth amount of centuries? Founded in 1865. What about those organizations? Don't just assume because their dirt hasn't spilled out to the public that they operate with morality. That should have you sit and think on that, because how many nonprofits and community, this, that, and the third, are there? And what real impact and what real changes do they actually make in tangible forms? Not just nice words about equity and equality and no, like actual my life has changed. Like I started here and now I'm here. Like you can see the growth. There's a whole timeline. There's a whole Venn diagram. We got the statistics. We see the line go up. Like where is it for these organizations, especially those who are in social realms? Whether we're talking about the Head Starts, whether we're talking about the victims of blah, 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 whether we're talking about police reform, whether we're talking about even the vets supporting vets. How many vets are homeless in these streets? But they put their lives and their limbs on the line. All these organizations, all these, this, that, and the third. And how much improvement have they made to the people that they swear to God they were here to serve? Let's, wrap this thing up because I don't want to hold you too long. Tina is just simply a symptom, said Alice Turcos, a survivor advocate who spearheaded an open letter this month calling for an investigation of the group and more accountability. So that is the end of the article. Again, I will link this in the description box down below. Check it out. Check both of the articles out. Me Too and the one I just read with the Cuomo situation. What I will say is, like, again, I know y'all done heard it. Y'all are like, oh, I get it. Money and morality doesn't mix. But I need y'all to get it and believe in it and see it. Whenever we tie in money into morality, it doesn't mix. Even the George Floyd fund that a lot of these multi-billion-dollar corporations put money into to quote-unquote help with this, that, and the third, come to find out that fund is for loans. They turn it into a banking system because morality and power never checks itself. It never puts itself into a position to cease its power, to cease its range. And I need people to understand that. With this whole Me Too situation and Time's Up situation, this is the commentary part. Me Too is still credible for the fact that it started with Tarana Burke. And if you have that mindset where I'm helping on a grassroots level, I'm helping on a community level, I am helping victims of sexual assault, molestation, rape, and so on and so forth to get the healing, get the justice that they need so they can repair themselves back together, Me Too is legitimate. But if we're talking about the Hollywood shuffle of, yeah, we're removing Harvey Weinstein, but we're okay with people like Russell Simmons, even though he has sexual assault allegations on him, I'm looking at you funny style. Because you don't get to judge whose sexual assault experience is more valid and less valid depending on who they're accusing. If that's the point of Me Too and that's the point of Time's Up, then there is no need for Me Too and Time's Up because that's basically what's already happening now. This is why when women are working with power, it's hard for them to even come out and talk about their truth. Why? Because they have to face people who are no different than the Me Too of Tchen and Kaplan who will tell them, well, I don't know, I don't think so, we're going to have to change the name. Like, if you're just going to do the same old, then there's no point of you being here because it's a scam organization. Because if you're not going to make any real change, you're not really going to challenge power, then what are you here for besides a career move? Time's Up, like I said, since its genesis, 2018, they had aides within the Time's Up organization that was questioning the leadership of Tchen because they said that the woman, Tchen, was not aligned. Their mission wasn't clear. The work that they were doing didn't align with the mission. And by 2020, they pulled her card and was like, you strayed so far from victim advocacy, y'all are advocating for the perpetrators. And now everything's falling out the closet. DK is like, well, we don't want to touch this either because our hands are dirty. So it seems like everybody came together for Time's Up so they can work on their career and grab power. It had nothing to do with the victims. The victims were just a black sheep. The victims were just there as a mole, as a Trojan horse. I'm going to use victims' real experiences so I can get a come up, so I can get a bigger desk, so I can get the corner office, so my name can be on the door. but it had nothing to do with victims. It had nothing to do with changing legislation. It had nothing to do with education. It always tends to be, when it comes to power checking power, a power move. If you believe because Harvey Weinstein is no longer, quote unquote, no longer, because we don't know who's still contracted to him, we don't know what his legal this, that, and the 30, we don't know what he's getting back on the kickback and the residuals, because he did work on films and movies. So on the surface level, he no longer has power, quote unquote. But who's to say that he's not in the background still getting his money and still pulling strings? Who's to say that there aren't any other Harvey Weinsteins out there? And to assume like Harvey Weinstein was the only person there, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself, and you think Harvey Weinstein is the only one, that now Hollywood is a safe haven. You're kidding yourself. Throw Times Up all the way in the trash, because you're literally telling me the genesis, the first year of y'all being established, your staffers were already questioning your direction. And now everything just hit the fan. So this lets me know it was just a sham of an organization to begin with. Y'all were using victims as a
trampoline
into your career. Literally like bouncing off of the hurt, the trauma, the victimization, the psychological obstacles, and so on and so forth of victims, so you can progress in your career, or you can start your career. It had nothing to do with saving women, supporting women. It had everything to do with your own power, Serena. It had everything to do with you having the power to control the strings behind the scenes. Because y'all did more work in protecting predators like Cuomo than the actual survivors. And that's what Time's Up has stood for and will continue to stand for. The trust has been broken. And as we can see with the text messages that the Washington Post got and then spilled it over to the New York Times, and what victims have said and spoke, there is nothing to rebuild. You cannot build on faulty land and expecting the building to stand strong. Just like that Miami condo complex. It fell because it was on faulty foundation. Just like this Time's Up movement. Let it go. It was a sham to begin with. Me Too still has its credibility, but even within Me Too, you gotta kill the heads of the snakes, because there's still some snakes there. And y'all need to properly give Tarana Burke her flowers, properly give Tarana Burke her position. The gag is she started and kickstarted this whole thing. Y'all stole her momentum to make a quick buck out of it. Meanwhile, she's not out here saying, it's mine, Me Too belongs to me, it's mine. She's doing the work that she's always believed in. And out of all the shiesty people involved in this scam of supporting women, and it's the same women who are using your heartbreak, your heartache, your trauma, propelling into their career, the only person who seems to be clean in all of this is Tarana Burke. The second person seems to be Rose McGowan, because she's calling out other people too. So, that's my 2 cents. Power and morality, money and morality never mix. As well as, do not assume because a woman is a woman that she's automatically compassionate, automatically empathetic, and automatically morally righteous. Women can be just as corruptible, just as messy, just as lowbrow, just as anything as any man. And that's true equality, right? Men can be trash and women can be trash too. And as we can see with Time's Up and Me Too, it's a fact. So that's my commentary. I didn't know it's going to be this long. Y'all let me know in the comments down below. What did y'all think? Did you read the articles? And do you agree with my position with all of this and how it flopped? It flopped because there was no real invested interest. There was no real protecting of the victims. It had everything to do with what they can get behind the scenes. That's why they focus so much on getting money and power and prestige than actually supporting victims. It was their MO, and their MO got found it to be faulty. But that's all I got for y'all today. Y'all can always find me on social media. Everything is in the description box. And come through for our self-care Sunday sessions of Paint Your Truth workshop sessions. That's where we do process painting. We talk, we chill, and it's a good time. It's a good vibe to focus on your self-care, your wellness, your holistic health, and give yourself the care that you need unapologetically because you deserve it. And with all that being said, y'all, be blessed, be enlightened, be loved. I am out, and everything is in the description box, as well as where to find me, how to contact me. Peace.